I'd like to put a question through to you around the concept of ROT. And I just want to put some context on this before I put it across. So when we think about ROT, redundant, obsolete, and trivial data, we've been working with it for a long time in our response. There may be some customers out there that are not quite familiar with what it means and how we manage it. Now, from an Altron perspective, when we were going through our data management phase and cleaning up our data, the first port of call was to understand what ROT did we have within the organization, to separate that ROT out, to remediate it, to manage it, and then to understand what personal information we had left and to put the correct measures in place to protect that personal information. Could I ask you to maybe just expand on the concept of ROT for our audience so they understand what we mean by that?
Shane, thanks. Great question. And we were alluding to it already earlier when we were talking about how some organizations potentially could save on the disk capacity storage requirements that they have, 30%, even up to 50%. Redundant, obsolete, and trivial data refers to, during scanning, the metadata that we're able to get from our information. For example, when it was last accessed, what's inside of the file, what type of file is it? Redundant data means we have the same copy of that information lying in multiple locations, especially these days with the advent of collaboration using the Microsoft portfolio of products. We see that information can be stored in many places, in your email system, perhaps in OneDrive, perhaps in Microsoft Teams and SharePoint Online. That same information lying in multiple places doesn't need to exist. It really needs to exist in one. So redundant data, first and foremost, means don't leave many copies of the same data. This talks directly to the requirements of PIA through the reduction of data or data minimization. If we're going to manage data well and have good governance, we really shouldn't have multiple copies of the same thing lying around. Secondly, obsolete data refers to data that no longer applies to our retention processes and policy. So if we're storing data for a predefined period of time, because that's its business relevance in the organization, once that time's lapsed, we really should get rid of the data. Old data is stale data and we don't need it anymore. And then lastly, trivial data is potentially data that doesn't make business sense anymore. What we often find during these scans very quickly on is that large size data can be left lying around that was used for temporary extract purposes. We got a database, we want to do some business intelligence or reporting on it, we do an extract and it accidentally gets left behind. This data, whilst very large, could have very sensitive data inside of it, but it's very temporary as well. So this trivial data really shouldn't be left around. Redundant, obsolete, and trivial data can save money, but it can also improve the good governance of the information that we have because it makes the set of data much smaller. Maybe just one last point on ROT. It can be difficult to tell what's inside of unstructured data. If we look at a database, that's easy. A database is well structured. It's got columns, columns have headings. But when it comes to unstructured data, an Excel file, CSV, Word document, knowing what's inside of them is difficult. It isn't that difficult because we can open it up and we can read the contents of it programmatically. We can even use artificial intelligence to be able to bucket content into similar looking data. These look like pay slips. These look like board level reports. But it gets really tricky when we start finding scanned information, when we start looking at how we digitize physical records and bring them in into our good practices around managing digital content. Within Altron Security, we have offerings that can help digitize these physical records, take scanned information, apply optical character recognition, lift out a credit card number from a picture of a credit card, even be able to take voice recordings from a call center and apply text to speech to be able to index the speech inside of it. So it sounds like a big challenge, and it is a big challenge because we sit with a lot of data. All organizations sit with terabytes, if not petabytes of data. But if we eat the elephant slowly, scan iteratively one location by one location, using these modern tools with artificial intelligence and optical character recognition, we are able to pull out the information, classify it, and be able to reduce that data set through redundant, obsolete, and trivial data. Thanks, Shane.